All right, so my name is Ryan Gligan, and I'm going to be talking about my previous career as a construction manager. I left the construction management industry in 2010 to come back to school to study computer science, amongst other things apparently. And so there are two main, there's a division in construction, there's two main camps. There's commercial construction and residential construction. In commercial, you have these different categories, and each one of them can be split up into subcategories as well. Core and shell is what you'd see. So behind these two gentlemen, one guy fondly pointing at something, the construction's going on behind him. You're looking at the foundation of the building, the skeleton, the concrete slab floors. That's the core. The shell is the actual exterior of the building, the glazing or the glass, metalwork, all that good stuff. Usually the company that builds the actual building doesn't handle the interior. You get an interiors company that will do that. And that's the next category. So an interiors company will take a bare floor and will basically build it out to whatever the client wants it to be. So you have different, whatever the company does, if they're an accounting firm and they need, like if they need offices for privacy, if they're having clients come in and say, giving their financial information, you don't want people to overhear it, you build offices. If you're dealing with a trading company, usually they have cubicles because most people are just staring at computer screens all day, all that good stuff. Then the next category is renovation. So you might have a company that, when they first moved into a space, said, okay, we're going to have this many employees in this role, so we need this many cubicles, and we're going to have this many employees in this role, so we need this many offices, and we're going to need only 2 conference rooms. And then they expand and they say, okay, well, it turns out we need more people in cubicles, and we need more conference rooms, so let's take a couple of those single offices, knock down walls, and combine them into a new conference room. So that's the renovation part of it. In residential, now I did mostly commercial construction, so that's where my expertise lies. Residential, you have new home, but new home is kind of misleading because you can't have a commercial side to that because it handles townhomes, apartment complexes, things like that. So you have a company that's actually building, you're building it for, and then they're going to rent it out to subletters. Or you can actually be hired by the homeowner, build a home, and then you also have renovation. Most people, when they move out of their house, renovate certain items, bathrooms, kitchens, things that will increase the value of their house. So yeah, we have that. By the way, if you Google construction management, all you get is pictures of people in hard hats pointing at things. So it was so funny, I just decided to keep it as a picture. All right, so as a general contractor, the two terms are kind of synonymous, general contractor, construction manager. You are managing basically everything. You're managing the architects, the engineers, the clients, the trades. The architects, so the chances are the client will hire the architect and the engineer, but the client typically doesn't know construction. If they run a retail store, then they're not interested in learning how things are built. So they hire architects and engineers, obviously, to design everything. And we come in and we kind of have to level with the clients and say, okay, this is what is going to happen. We have to ground the architect and the engineer because usually their designs are very ambitious and can't actually work in whatever space that they want us to build it in. So you're dealing with a lot of different components, which makes for a very interesting time. But obviously that's why this position exists. If everything went off without a hitch, you wouldn't have a job as a construction manager. So within general contracting, you have a number of positions. These aren't all of them, but these are the kind of the main ones that make the construction project happen. So you have the account exec, which goes and contacts new clients. You have, and they also try to get in with different architects and engineers, because an architect will call us up and say, oh, we want you to bid on a particular project. You have the estimator. Now I was an estimator after a while. I started out as a site superintendent. An estimator bids on projects. I'll explain more about that in a little bit. Purchaser, what they do is when a trade gives a price as to how much they say, wow, it's going to cost you $25,000 for me to do this. The purchaser basically beats them into submission and says, no, it's not. It's going to take you, $18,000. And they are the most feared people in the construction industry, as it were. The gentleman that was a purchaser at our company, his nickname was the Prince of Darkness. So, project manager is supposed to be the point person for the client. They also talk to the estimator. They also talk to the site superintendent. They kind of handle everything, answer questions, try to handle the schedule, things like that. The site superintendent, I will talk about more in just a second. And then the laborer ties into the superintendent. The laborer is the person that runs the job when the site super isn't there. They also help out with cleaning and making sure the site stays organized. Because obviously with a lot of, with all these different trades bringing in material, it can get very messy and very hectic. So the laborer is kind of the person that coordinates, all right, if you have this many pallets of flooring material, it goes in this area, lighting goes in this area, all that. The trades, this is by far not an extensive list. It's only scratched the surface. I split these two apart because in New Jersey, if you hire a carpenter, they handle the walls and the ceilings. But in New York City, you can actually hire two different companies, one to build the walls and one to build the ceilings, not the general. That's because there are actually two different unions that handle those trades. Millwork is anything woodwork related, so wood doors, wood frames, cabinets, like I said, anything wood related, wood base, chair molding, all that. You have a separate trade for just metal doors, frames, and hardware. You have metal and glass, so if you have like office systems, office front systems. Paint, masonry is all stone, flooring, different type of stone, tile, wood, carpet. And then the reason I underline these three letters is these are what's called the MEPS trades: mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and sprinkler. So everyone has, especially in New York City, everyone has their own union that you have to deal with, which makes things interesting. What I did, okay, so I was a site super, which meant that I was the point person on site, which meant that if the client came to tour the site, I had to kind of field questions and handle all that. I managed the trades, so I have to say, okay, if you're laying down wood flooring, I say, okay, well, how many days is it going to take you? I'm like, oh, it's going to take me 5 days. Well, I need you to do it in 4. How many guys are you going to bring? They're like, oh, well, we only have a crew of 2. I said, well, you need to get more people. So, figuring out, like on one particular job I had to tell them, so I kept having guys who were supposed to start at 7, and I realized that the construction elevator could only hold 10 people at a time, and that to get all the crews up took about a half an hour. So I calculated how fast the elevator was and everything, and I said, okay, I need you guys to start showing up at 6:15 in the morning to make sure that everyone gets up by 7 and is ready to start, because we have to maintain a schedule. So you're handling everything on site, basically. Then I became an estimator. I handled the bid process. So I would tour, first I would get drawings. I'd then walk around the site, inspect the site. I would bid on projects. Now the bid is kind of a delicate thing because you want to go high enough that you obviously make money. That's point of business. But you also want to make sure that you're covering yourself for anything that could possibly arise. You know, things always happen. You'll tear down, you know, like part of the construction process is usually demolition, and when you do demolition, you'll find pipes in walls that you say, okay, where does this pipe go? I have no idea, it just exists. And, you know, and then, you know, but if you say, okay, well, there might be a pipe in every single one of these walls that I might have to remove, well, then you'll price yourself out of the job. You'll never get any work. So you have to kind of balance worst case scenario with best case scenario to get the job. And that's where these qualifications come in. I had to basically, on the bid, come up with a list of qualifications and say, okay, this is all included, but we're excluding X, Y, and Z. If that comes up, it's going to be an extra. I'd have to manage the trades from the office in terms of responsibility. I would have trades call me up saying, you know, oh yeah, you know, you wanted us to install tile in this area, but we didn't include waterproofing underneath the tile. So you're a tile company, that's what you do for a living, and you didn't think that you need to install waterproofing, which you do on every single job, and they say, oh yeah, okay, I guess. You know, like they try to like be cute, like they try to like, pull one over on you. It's just an interesting process, to say the least. And also had to manage resources in terms of money, time, all that. Basically, a client would pay us, you know, obviously an X amount of dollars, and we would have to kind of build certain contingencies into the job. You know, basically put in a little bit of extra money because no project goes off without some kind of hitch, and you don't want to go back to a client for more money unless you absolutely have to. So, you know, we try to build in like a little bit of a cushion. This way, so, you know, we could say, oh yeah, this thing happened, but don't worry, we got it. You know, like it's covered. You know, makes us look like rock stars. And it, like I said, it happens on every single job. So it's not like we're trying to pull it over and be like, oh wow, if this doesn't happen, we'll get to pocket this money. It never works out like that. And then change orders are when things do happen that are a change to the scope of the project and need to basically, you know, give a price for extra work. So the construction industry as a whole, what I'll say is the benefits is you get to work on new and interesting projects all the time. You get to meet new people. I got to work in a lot of really cool buildings. I got to work in the Grand Central Terminal. I got to work in the Chrysler building. I worked at One Liberty Plaza, which has Scotia Bank as their headquarters. That project involved me removing it was a vault, it was a bank vault with 2 foot thick reinforced concrete walls. And I had to remove it, well, not me personally, but I had to manage the crew that removed it from the 32nd floor. So it was a very, very interesting project, to say the least. The detriments or the downside of working in the construction industry is that, one, a lot of clients tend to think of you as, you know, when you're working in construction, you're like, oh, that's, you know, like, oh, you're wearing a suit and tie? Well, that's cute, but you have a labor, you know, intensive job. You're not a real professional employee. You know, like, I would get talked down to all the time by clients. It was, you know, some of them were very, very rude, but, you know, it is what it is. The major thing was being stuck in the middle is, you have the architects and engineers on one side of you saying, well, I can't possibly be wrong because I went to school for X amount of years and paid all this money for this fancy degree, and I can draw amazing designs. And I go, well, you can draw a wheel on paper, but you can't make it roll. It's not going to work in this situation. So, yeah. And then, you know, the client on the other side of you who says that they can't be wrong because they're paying you. So you have to basically kind of be a mediator between the two. And it's also, if you're working on site, it's a very dirty job. I can't tell you how many times I came home and was covered in sheetrock dust. I got to see what I would look like in, you know, 40 years when I had gray hair. So if you ever have to deal with construction, you know, on your home or for your company, these are some tips and tricks. I would say get multiple prices, because don't just go with the first person you hire, that gives you a price. A lot of times if you get multiple prices and you like a particular contractor, if you say, hey, I got another price, they're a little bit lower, they'll try to meet you closer to that price. Make sure you ask questions, ask for breakdowns on price. That's pretty important. And by breakdowns I mean, like maybe not so much getting a breakdown for every single item in terms of price, but say, okay, well, how many square foot of flooring are you giving me? Because this way you compare apples to apples.
You're at 15 minutes.
This is my last slide, so make sure you write things down. Don't forget, a yellow legal pad is the best thing for this job. And then make sure you align your expectations. Like I said, it's a dirty job. Don't think that because you hired a contractor who said they're going to keep things clean, that there's not going to be any mess at all. And lastly, but most importantly, buy a hard hat and then point at something. And that's it.
$16.08. Okay.